Hello and welcome to everyone around the world. I'm Ken Tippins, and this is the Runaway Republic. In today's show, we'll be talking about the office of the president, POTUS, a commander-in-chief, the vanguard of democracy, the leader of the free world. We'll be talking about that guy. Also, we'll be talking about sanctuary cities in our local segment as well. So with that, let's get started. First, in our national news, I figured I'd take a different route this week. What I wanted to do was really talk about the office of the president. Not the president specifically, but what comes along with being in office. What comes along with being the president. It's more than just a job title. Specifically, I want to talk about restoring dignity to that office. We all know that the president, he's really off the cuff, random, and this can be an advantage and a disadvantage, both at the same time if we imagine it. Being unpredictable is great tactically, but when that's applied to a long-term strategy, it ends up in catastrophe. Just this past week alone, we've seen a numerous amount of things that would make you question the sanity of not only the president, but of the people that voted and elected the president. Everything from the firing of the former FBI director Comey, holding closed-door meetings with the Russian foreign minister, ambassador, and media, while barring the U.S. media. Reports that President Trump leaked classified information during that meeting, and the list goes on. It makes you really wonder, what have we really gotten ourselves into as a country? At what point did we lose our way? At what point did our president become the subject of so much abject hate and just disdain for the office of the president? I don't agree with a lot of what Trump says. There are some good ideas baked in there. There are. But the vast majority of what he says is wishy-washy at best and hypocritical at worst. Nevertheless, he's president. Regardless of what we think of him personally, he was elected. If we don't have some respect for our POTUS, how can we ever expect any other country to have respect for us as an entire country? After all, he was elected. When I think about President Trump and some of the controversies that are going on now, whether it's with him and his Twitter account, or if it's him and his sound bites about grabbing women inappropriately, whatever it is, it makes me question what a president should be to the American people outside of politics aside. And I kind of came down with a list of qualities that I look for when I hope to see a president. Such things as perseverance, consistency, strength of character, complete honesty, and which may be determined by whatever's going on in the world, because you can't be completely honest without telling our enemies or enemies of America some sort of secret. So I understand that. But I wrote down a list to really kind of give myself an idea of what I would expect from a president in terms of characteristics. And I find myself really questioning a lot of Donald Trump's characteristics, his motives. I believe he has a good idea of where he wants the country to be. I'm just not 100% sold that he knows how to get us there peacefully. And Donald Trump isn't the first president to have to be rebuked or to be shunned, whatever you want to call it. But he is the first to really lash back. And I think that's what America's really coming to grips with now in 2017, is that We have a commander-in-chief that isn't afraid to voice his opinions via social media, press conferences, sound bites, whatever have you. And I think that's a little different. We're used to our presidents taking the higher road, the path of people that won't say anything back. And, satire aside, we just kind of accept it all. Now, with President Trump, he is very much the type of guy, or at least he showed himself to be, the kind of guy that doesn't go quietly into the night. If you have something bad to say about Donald Trump, there's a good chance he probably has something bad to say about you, which I don't mind. If you're able to talk about the president, you should be able to have the president talk about you. But at what point does it get to become a liability, a moral liability? Because when we view presidents, we tend to view these larger-than-life figures. People like George Washington, FDR, Lincoln, Truman, Teddy Roosevelt, Kennedy, Obama even. All of which are larger-than-life figures. They are tremendous people, regardless of the politics, regardless of what you thought about them personally. They were tremendous people on the world stage, just extremely formidable personally. And that is the general idea that comes to mind when you think of the American president, the leader of the most powerful country that this planet has seen. But in 2017, we don't have that same stroke of confidence in our leader, President Trump, as we used to have in previous presidents. And I believe it is in part due to the fact that Trump is completely willing to go tit for tat with people. I believe it is a mixture of his willingness to be combative with the media and the public, along with his ability to just kind of say what he wants to say without regard to the political repercussions. Mind you, Donald Trump is not a politician. He is a great marketer. He is a businessman that decided to get into politics. And so we have to, at least I've decided to give him a certain degree of forgiveness for his social misgivings. And that's sad when you think of it, because I want to believe that Donald Trump is a world-class man, not because he's an excellent businessman, but because he managed to become the elected official of America, which means we chose him, whether you voted for him or not. Our process dictates that he's a president. And I want to believe that deep down inside there is this touch of, I guess, refined political class that comes with the office, to whether or not if you have it, it starts to manifest itself on you just due to the gravity and the enormity of the job that's set before you. I keep believing and wishing that Donald Trump will one of these days, find his true stride. Instead of being combative with the public, let the public have their say. After all, this is America. We have a free press. Free to be supportive or otherwise of any person, public or private. One thing that I would like to see from Donald Trump is I would like to see him become more presidential. And let me quantify that. When I say that, I mean that I would like for him to be more refined when it comes to social graces. I would love it if he didn't do anything else. I would love it if he just stayed off of his Twitter account. We have a commander-in-chief with nuclear launch codes who tweets at 3 a.m. fine. He has the power to do that. He has the right to do that. But at what point is that undermining your social strength, your social connections when it comes to the American people? One of Donald Trump's campaign promises was to heal the divide with Americans, the old and the young, the racial divide, the gender divide. And I would like to see him make good on that. But it's kind of hard to see Donald Trump making good on that if we can't all come together and respect him as a leader. We respect the office of president, but we have to get to a point to where we can respect the man as president. And I believe that is where we have a lot to work on as a country. Now moving into our Did You Know question. So our Did You Know question for this week is, do you know how teddy bears came into existence? Our answer right after the local segment. Our local segment this week comes from a law that was recently signed by Governor Abbott. Here in Texas, Governor Abbott signed a bill that would ban sanctuary cities. And that sounds, kind of straightforward on the surface, but there are some things inside of this bill that would give you pause. So I want to start this off by saying, what exactly is a sanctuary city? Because the term is loosely applied. So I wanted to get a general definition that could be kind of used to gauge cities. So sanctuary cities are effectively cities that have leaders or laws that may or may not cooperate with federal immigration laws or agents concerning a person's legal status. As we have it here in Texas, the bill would fine municipal governments $25,000 a day while the law is violated, which is a pretty steep fine. But it could also, and this is the sticking point here, it could also result in charges, misdemeanor charges, for sheriffs, policemen, or constables that didn't comply with the law, which goes into effect September 1st. Now, these laws, or this law in particular, is targeted toward curbing sanctuary cities and their harboring of illegal immigrants. Illegal immigration is a touchy point here in the United States. Generally, the media portrays illegal immigrants as people of Hispanic origin when that's not always the case. I mean, there are thousands of people that come in from Europe, Canada, Asia, Africa that have overstayed their visas and are thus not legal, or people that have just straight up came into the country illegally. With all that being said, let me give you some history on how so-called sanctuary cities came into being. So sanctuary cities originally come from the fugitive slave law of the 1850s. This law was built upon the Constitution, and pretty much to summarize it, it barred slaves from escaping to non-slaveholding states. People refused, and thus sanctuary cities were born. In contemporary times, San Francisco led the way by passing a city ordinance back in 1985 that was specifically targeted to police officers and civil magistrates and barring them from assisting federal immigration officers. Other cities followed, and thus sanctuary cities were officially a thing. Now, and that's all well and good. I understand the purpose. I understand why it started. It started in part due to people from Guatemala and I believe El Salvador, if I'm correct, protesting. Now, that's how sanctuary cities came to be in modern times. Now, here's why I believe that sanctuary cities are no longer valid. For one, sanctuary cities, they just completely disrespect American law. If you come into my house through a window, I'm going to put you out. If you knock on the front door, I'll let you in and we can, converse and have pleasantries. But if you break into my house, there's no way of you ever staying. Two, it's in direct violation of federal law. A direct violation. Number three, it's a slap in the face to the people that actually respected our laws and came to the United States the right way. The people that paid their dues, waited in line, filled out the paperwork, and did what they had to do in order to get to the United States. No, I don't believe that there is a excuse that is valid when you have people that come to America the right way every day for illegal immigration. Fourth, us as Americans, we have to face the facts. I'm an American. Chances are you're an American. If I violate the law, I will be punished by American laws. If you're an American, you will be punished by American laws. But illegal immigration violates our law daily and with impunity. And thus it is still allowed to stand. I don't believe that illegal immigration should be allowed to supersede American laws. Not when me, you, and whoever else that are native-born Americans are subject to it. We have to have consistency. How can we look to enforce law and order and democracy worldwide when we can't even enforce our own borders, enforce our own laws? It's kind of hypocritical. And my fifth point on why I believe sanctuary cities are no longer valid and bad, it comes from a moral standpoint. I believe it can lead to a moral dilemma with police officers. Law enforcement officers are sworn to uphold the law, period. Not some or a specific law, but all laws. What message is being sent to officers that are told not to enforce this law or that, or only a portion of this? Sanctuary cities are inadvertently compromising good law enforcement officers for the sake of feeling good, when officers should enforce all laws, including immigration laws, or at least assist therein when they come into contact with an illegal immigrant. I want to make this clear that I'm not against illegal immigration, or legal immigration, sorry. I believe that if you go through the right process, you go through our system, go through our laws, and you decide to come here correctly, more power to you. And this is a really touchy subject, especially for me, because I have a couple of friends that are legal residents. They come from the Caribbean, and they explained to me how difficult and time-consuming and how much of a burden it is to do it the right way, to go through all of our steps, respect our laws, respect our policies, and come here and to look and see that people that had no regard for American law, no respect for what we hold sacred and dear and true, and to see those people constantly unpunished, to see those people constantly living their lives as if nothing was wrong. I'm not against immigration, but I am completely for illegal immigration. And I know some people out there are sensitive about this matter, but you know what? Illegal immigration is just that. It's illegal. I'm not saying the person is a bad person. I'm not saying you aren't fleeing your native country for a valid reason. But as an American, as a person that tries to uphold American law, I do believe that the process should be respected. If I have to go to jail or be punished or given a ticket or a fine for violating any law here, I believe that illegal immigrants should also be held to that same standard. With that being said, let's switch roles here for a second. Let's pivot. Let me give you the answer to our Did You Know question for this week. So the answer to our question, which was, do you know how teddy bears came into existence? The answer is, in 1902, Teddy Roosevelt was invited by the Mississippi governor on a hunting trip. During this hunting trip, Roosevelt came across a bear that was tied to a tree by one of his assistants. Roosevelt, a big game hunter, a man's man, saw this as unsportsmanlike and refused to shoot the bear. The news spread, and a Brooklyn toy maker made a toy in honor of the bear that Roosevelt refused to shoot, and thus Teddy's bear came into existence. And that concludes our show for this week. I'm Ken Tippins. You've been great, and this has been the Runaway Republic.